All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating and honestly kind of mind-bending idea from a classic spiritual text. It's a concept that takes our usual understanding of light and darkness and just flips it completely on its head. Let's get into it. So, right away, the source just drops this incredible paradox on us. Faith is a dark night, but somehow that very darkness gives light. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? A total contradiction. And that's the big question, isn't it? The one we're going to try and unpack here. We're going to follow the logic of this text step by step to see how this seemingly crazy statement actually builds a really powerful argument about what it means to believe. Okay, so to crack this puzzle, we've got to start with that word dark. The text argues that when we're talking about faith, dark doesn't mean what we think it does. It's not about the lights being off at all. So the text basically lays out two completely different ways of knowing things. On one side, you've got your natural knowledge, the stuff we figure out with our senses, our intellect, by comparing one thing to another. But then there's knowledge from faith. This is totally different. It comes from believing in things we've never seen, by submitting our intellect to what we're taught. They're just two separate paths. And here is the absolute key. The text defines the darkness of faith as, get this, excessive light. Just think about staring right into the sun. Its light is so powerful it doesn't help you see better. It totally blinds you. It just overwhelms your ability to see anything else. And that is the core argument right there. Faith, according to this text, is that brighter supernatural light. It's so intense that it deprives or just completely eclipses the dimmer light of our own reason. That's why it's called dark. Not because light is missing, but because there's too much of it for our intellect to handle. So, I get it. This is a pretty heady, abstract concept, right? Luckily, the source gives us this fantastic analogy to make it way more concrete. And it all has to do with color. So the text asks you to do a little thought experiment. Imagine trying to explain the color yellow to someone who has been blind since birth. I mean, how would you even start? Okay, so let's walk through this little dilemma. First, the person can hear you say the word yellow. They can grasp the name of the color. But here's the problem. They can't form any real mental picture of it. Why? Because the tool they're using, their hearing, is completely wrong for the job. You can't hear color. You have to see it. And this is the big connection. The source is saying our intellect is just like that person's hearing. It can take in the words, the ideas, the articles of faith, but it can't, on its own, grasp the divine reality they're pointing to. It's just not equipped for it. The same way hearing isn't equipped for color. And the text even pulls in a scriptural quote to back this up. Faith comes from hearing. See? It emphasizes that faith is something you receive through a specific channel, like hearing, not something you puzzle out on your own. Okay, so we've got our heads around why faith is called dark. It's this blinding, excessive light. But how does that darkness actually give light? This is where the whole paradox finally gets resolved. And here's the big twist. For faith to really do its thing, it's not enough to just sidestep our intellect. According to the text, it has to actively nullify it. It has to basically wipe the slate clean. And to explain this, the source points to a quote from Isaiah. "If you do not believe, you will not understand." Notice the order there. Belief has to come first. You can't use your normal way of understanding to arrive at faith. You have to believe first, and then you get a whole new kind of understanding. And to really paint a picture of this, the source gives us another powerful image, that cloud from the book of Exodus. Remember, the scripture says the cloud was dark and obscure, but somehow it could illumine the night. It's the perfect metaphor for what we're talking about, something dark that gives light. So here's the resolution, plain and simple. The darkness of faith isn't a bug, it's a feature. By overwhelming and nullifying our dimmer natural reason, it makes room for its own unique, much brighter light to shine. The darkness is actually what makes the illumination possible. All right, let's tie this all together. What is the final takeaway here? What is this different kind of sight all about? So here's the whole argument in a nutshell. Faith is called dark because its light is just too much for our natural intellect. It completely overwhelms our usual ways of knowing things, through our senses and reason. But, and this is key, this darkening is totally necessary. It's what clears the stage for a different kind of understanding. Which leads us to that wild conclusion. The more faith darkens our intellect, the more light it actually gives us. And the source wraps up with this beautiful verse that frames this whole night of faith not as something scary, but as a guide. Night will be my illumination. It's suggesting that this journey through what feels like intellectual darkness is the very path to real spiritual insight. And that really just leaves us with a final question to chew on. If this ancient text has a point, then maybe true illumination doesn't come from finding a light we can easily understand. Maybe it comes from having the courage to step into a darkness that promises a completely different kind of sight. So, the question is, what might you gain by stepping into the dark?
Thanks for joining me for this one.